standing, saying a prayer and pledging allegiance to the flag. Okay, prayer first. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for bringing us all here together in good health and in good spirits. Lord, we ask that you give us all a spirit of love and honesty and cast aside our ego and our proud attitudes, Lord. Help us to love one another better and in different ways today, Lord. We thank you. In your son's name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. All right, thank you everyone for coming. Go to item 3 on the agenda. Do we have any comments? How about request for adjustment, Mike? Okay, thank you. All right, consent agenda, items 5 through 10, 6 items. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Estimated totals as of the 10 or a little over 10%. The appraisal district has implemented their new system and there's lots of errors. Probably are not real good totals, so hopefully we'll have better totals by the end of April. Also, Senate Bill 2 has put in a new law for properties 5 million or less. It's called the circuit breaker, and it's more for commercial. And you get 20% off, a 20% credit on value if you've owned the property for more than a year. And that went into effect in 24, and it'll end at this point on the 26th. In 2026, it's a pilot program, but we'll see what happens in 26. So it's just information.
Have you had 20% credit if you've owned the property for a year? And this is a tax credit or credit on appraisal?
Appraisal.
Appraisal.
Or commercial that is 5 million or less, or residential that's non-homesteaded, such as rural properties.
So rental properties is what, 5 million or less? Okay. I'm curious about that.
Have you done any preliminary analysis to the effect?
It's in these totals.
Okay,
It'll be included in the total.
okay, very good.
This is on page 16.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? All right, that passes. All right, the regular agenda, item 11, consider and act on the drought contingency plan. This is a plan that's in place. It has to be reviewed every 5 years. Were there any changes?
Not anything to the drought contingency plan, the trigger. There were changes we made to the water conservation plan. And that was because in 2019, we didn't have AMI meters. So we've updated it to include the fact that we have AMI meters. Also, we updated it to include the fact that we have an active strategic communication plan where we have public outreach on water conservation. So those two main items have been updated in the water conservation plan. So we would need a motion to approve so we can submit it by May 1.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the drought contingency plan and water conservation policy and authorize the adoption of a resolution regarding the review of that. Okay, all those in favor? Go ahead.
Section 1 says plans as previously adopted and amended by the district are hereby repealed and rescinded in their entirety. And I was wondering, okay, fine. Where's the new plan?
It's the old plan less what was taken out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
the old
why
plan. Don't you
we-
remember the old plan?
No.
We have to go through the review process, and what Eric was saying is that because it's a consolidated policy, and we have changes to the water conservation plan information that we're having, we are replacing the policy with a new one with these changes.
Okay. So, but the new available until May 1st.
It's effective starting May first, and that ties to the new review period cycle.
Okay,
So you say you throw out all of the old and just bring in the new.
It's a policy. Anytime we have a new policy, if we make we've had any number of changes, whether they're in minor or adopting new amended policy. So
Okay.
that's essentially what it is.
We're not amending a piece, we're removing all, and the new one is it. Okay.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Okay. Motion passes. You're on item 12. All right, item 12, consider the adoption of the resolution concerning the developed district status for 2024. Were there any changes?
You remain developed.
All right,
I have some questions. The ESFCs, do we have a final total and the number remaining available?
Yes, we do. And it has not changed much since last year. You have not, the totals have not altered much since we started this
Do we have those numbers?
We do. So where you are at right now, your wastewater is 8181.
8181.
That's correct.
That's how many that we have.
Unused?
No, that's used. Active, right.
active what?
Active,
DFDUs.
wastewater. And then for your water, the SFCs, it's 7803.
And how many? Number again?
7803.
7803.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And how many do we have? We have a pot that we haven't used, right?
That's correct. So the total that you have for wastewater is 8646,
8642.
8646.
I'm sorry, 46?
I apologize, 9101. The 95% is 8646.
Wait a minute, you said 95 what?
101.
9101.
What was 8646?
That was your 95% threshold.
You may want to start over with your numbers.
Yeah, okay. Here,
Yeah.
let's do this. I'll let you write these down. Yours are. So here's your actives
Active 8181. I got
Yeah.
that.
and 7803.
7803, which is regular water.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then,
The amount remaining for water.
yeah, I can send, I'll send a copy. These numbers are the ones that were presented to you last year. Yeah.
If that, for regular water, fresh water.
Fresh water
Is how much?
for the total that you have,
Yes,
8157.
8157.
57. Yes,
8187,
8157.
57.
Yes, sir.
And that's the 95% threshold.
No, your 95% threshold
Is
for
different.
water is 7749.
Could we have those memorialized in our?
Completely different.
They were last year.
Yeah, those are completely different numbers than you mentioned before. 'Cause aren't, all right, let's start over.
Okay,
How many wastewater DFDUs?
Wait a minute, is it SFDUE?
Same
same
thing
thing.
as the
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
ESFCs.
those are the
They
same.
changed the nomenclature.
Nomenclature.
SFDUE.
No, ESFC.
It was single family. Yeah, they're essentially the same thing.
Single family dwelling unit equivalent or
Single family connection.
Yeah, we got Susan right.
Let's take a vote. Who wants what?
I just want to know what the units are.
They're interchangeable.
Just
The-
tell me what the units are. What,
We use SFDUV.
and the second one was
So,
projected maximum?
so your projected maximum for water
Uh-huh.
is 8157.
Projected maximum.
And then the projected maximum for wastewater,
8691.
86.
9101.
9101.
It was changed last July. For there were, we made changes last July with it.
646 is not the 95, it's the total.
That's the total.
So again, to make sure I have it right. Wastewater 8181 and total allowed 9191.
8691 for a total allowed.
691. 691. So I don't,
And your 95% for wastewater is 8256.
We don't need that. What do we?
we don't need to, we don't need
The
to.
95% is what you need for your developed district status.
Correct, but we can calculate that. As long as we know the two end numbers.
That's
What's I got the three numbers for freshwater.
freshwater.
Now give us the three numbers for wastewater.
That's what we just did.
That's what we just did.
Well, he needs them again.
Okay, we're doing wastewater. So your active for wastewater is 8181. Your total allocated for wastewater is 8691.
Correct.
And do you want your 95%?
No, I can do the
I
math.
do.
Okay, for those who wanted, it's 8256.
That was water.
So for water, what you have active right now is 7803. Your total allowed is 8157.
I got that.
And then for if you want your 95%, it's 7749.
And what do we, price that we sell these at this point? Do you know that number?
I do not, I would defer.
Well, when you say sell, the district has purchased the connections at the sixth and final accounting amount. I can't remember off the top of my head what those numbers were.
Can this board vote to change the selling price to any developer?
Well, I think that's outside the scope of the developed district status item that we're talking about today. I think that's a
Okay,
whole other.
let's say it is. Moving on, can we change the price upward to reflect the limited amount of SFDUEs or ESFCs that we have available? Since they're more scarce, they should go for a higher price.
Again, this is a whole nother topic that's not on the agenda.
Okay, fine, we'll drop it until next month. Okay. I'd like to make a proposal at next month that we include a brief discussion on that.
Okay, we'll put it over here.
So based on your numbers, if we have to be at 95% developed, we are on the water side, but not the wastewater side.
And as long as we are on one, we will typically recommend
Right.
development
Okay, so
district.
that was the whole point. Okay.
Yeah. That's correct.
So for this item, the engineer has determined that we're past the 95%, which was the same determination last year. So the resolution would be to declare the district as a developed district for purposes of 2024, which will, of course, subject to 3% rollback rate when it comes, 3.5% rollback rate when it comes to your levy of your 2024 maintenance tax.
Okay. And last month's document, which had is Exhibit A to the resolution, developed for the district status for 2024. The first part was filled out, but the balance of the document was not filled out by the person who was supposed to sign that document. Is that available for us, a completed document?
So that's for it's a uniform form.
Yes, that happens
It's a
here.
generic form. It's for a number of different special purpose districts. So in the Woodlands, the MUDs don't have road or recreational facility bonding. Those other two sections are not applicable. Only
Okay.
the WS&D section.
Will we receive a completed form at some point in time, assigned? Because we don't have that. No, this is from last month. I have it right here.
We have this, right? And because we have to sign it,
Correct.
Here.
so it's filled out.
That's the,
Oh, that,
So this was ours to sign.
oh, okay, so,
So yeah,
this month is.
oh, okay, good. That's good news then. Thank you.
I don't have to vote.
It's just from,
Good job.
Good, thanks.
Could I ask one more question?
Yeah.
You know, we went through this in detail last year.
Correct.
Yes. And Fred and I went through a lot of detail. Is there any commercial property within the MUD that's not listed on that form?
No,
Every,
we went through everything. Power to use last.
okay, so all the parcels are listed. Okay.
We have gone through all the parcels, both developed and undeveloped, and allocated the ESFCs or SFTUs to them. And that's what all these numbers are based off of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we adopt the resolution concerning the developed district status.
I'll second that.
All right, is there a discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item number 13, consider an act on a supplemental agreement with the SJRA. This is just a new agreement or the same one from 2017?
Should be for plant one, typo on the agenda item. So this is the supplemental that was presented to districts in January. If you recall, the River Authority originally had wanted a vote on it in March. March is when Eric presented the 4 different options for all the different ways to fund it. The full 10-year plan needed to be funded. How that can be done. So now that discussion is taking place, the item is back on the agenda for districts to consider. As a reminder, the proposed supplement would provide for River Authority to issue up to $40 million in design and engineering of Plant One for a 30-year term. It would include up to 2 years capitalized interest, which the River Authority has indicated that they would utilize to allow for districts to have some runway to determine how they wanted to pay for the debt service on that. So the debt service would not show up in the wholesale rates for the 2-year period. So if districts want to do rollback rates, if they wanted to do flat fee, what have you. So that's a recap on the supplemental. One thing I've been telling all the boards up until this point, we'll continue through your meeting and the next, is that in order to be in a position to take a vote in the affirmative agreement, a director needs to have made the decision in their mind that going forward with a new plant is the path forward and not rehabilitation of existing components. If you have made that decision that a new plant is necessary, then you can, it's appropriate to consider. If not, then vote on the supplemental should be deferred and not taken. So wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody so you understood the kind of the consequences of moving forward with it. What another point that's been brought up is, well, the MBR technology may be a lot more expensive than during the stakeholder period when that was initially determined as the path. Would you reevaluate conventional versus MBR during that design stage of moving forward with Plant One? The answer from the River Authority was yes. That could still be evaluated, but you would be making a decision that moving forward with a new plant is the preferred path. So with that, I'll kind of open it up to y'all for discussion. And if you want.
Adam, who, I guess you produced this, correct? Yeah. Which is the one that you have suggested that we go with?
If you're asking me, the cheapest option would be through a tax.
Rollback.
Correct.
Okay. And then in the summary with the cons, it talked that the retail water sewer bill for typical retail MUD customers anticipated to increase approximately $250 in the next 11 years, as it's typical now at 104. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean,
That's whatever.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, I'll like to speak. Personally, I'm appalled that the River Authority would try to hold this vote, a few days before an election. And that's what's going on here. You're trying to subvert an attempt to get ahead of the election. And that's very bothersome to me for a state agency to attempt to do this. Understand? And I've seen it happen. I've sat through the trustee board meeting, and the purpose of this vote is to get it ahead of the election. That's it.
Mr. Smith, if I may. address
Yes.
your comment. We did not ask for it to be on the agenda. We asked for it to be on the March agenda.
Okay, what's it doing on this agenda? I'm just saying, we have a vote coming up for the citizens, right? It begins on Monday. There's 22 candidates competing in that vote. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of topics. But I'll be honest, I sat through the trustee board meeting, and obviously the intention here is to vote prior to the election. And that's very bothersome to me. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking it's going to be bothersome to a lot of other people. You know what I mean? And you talk about the water rate, 104 to 250, that includes this debt. It doesn't include any future price increases in the water coming out of Lake, down the pipeline, through the water plant, to the Woodlands divisions or the WWA. And we're going to open this spigot up, and the money is just going to flow, down the, down into the river authority. And I think we have an election. There's no reason to hold this vote now. We should let the people speak, you know what I mean? And we see what happens. But we begin voting on Monday. Voting on Monday, and this is intentional that this is occurring now. You know what I mean? I know enough.
You suspect it's intentional. It could be
Oh, well,
coincidental.
I've sat through I've sat through the trustee meetings,
I sat through that one too.
you know what I mean? And I'll tell you, there's people who want to vote on this before the election. You know what I mean?
At the end of the day, it's a director decision.
It's a director's decision.
Regardless of
That's
what,
right.
regardless of what is on the agenda, requested, what have you. Every director has to be qualified to be on this, to be on their respective board. And it's a board decision. I mean, you
Yeah, no,
know,
I agree.
it's a board decision. Some board members, I mean, we sit through all these. And
I know,
I'm
I
sure
do.
you probably watch them. I mean, some board members are adamant that it's time to move forward. They've been a part of stakeholder meetings.
Yeah.
They said, I mean, it's basically the opposite of your position.
I understand
Reasonable
that.
minds can disagree.
And
And
I
that's-
agree.
And that's where,
And we go to vote on Monday.
Yeah.
We begin voting on Monday.
and some directors, they respectfully disagree with that position.
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
you know what,
I
regardless of
understand.
elections, it's time to move forward. And that's the decision they made. And so I think, this is,
What's the stopgap? Let's say we approve it today, okay? The expenses start to incur, starting when?
that's, I think,
Approximately.
Approximately, probably no earlier than 7 to 9 months from now.
Okay, so what's the urgency to do it today as opposed to doing it in the next meeting? For all MUDs, not just for this one. I know that several MUDs have already met and they've already approved it. And I think that I have an opinion on that, but I'm not going to share it right now unless you want to hear it. But what is the urgency to do it today? If we don't do it today, what's the risk to moving forward? We're talking 2.5 weeks before the election occurs.
The risk would be if you defer, like a couple of the MUDs have, to next month. And according to David, they're seated. And the new individuals may not be comfortable voting on something they know nothing about. And so there may need to be an education process to bring them up to speed, just like we did 2 years ago for the new directors that came in 2 years ago. It may take several months of education and information and answering the questions before they are comfortable. And then you've extended that.
Well, the 10-year plan is the process, right?
Let him finish.
Okay, I'm
You've
sorry.
extended that 7 to 9 months, additional 3 or 4 months. And so now it's a year. And it was mentioned at the trustee meeting last week that because of escalation prices and inflation on the proposed new plant at $290 million, that's roughly $1 million a month escalation cost to the project cost. And so The longer it's delayed, there is a strong possibility that the cost of the plant will be greater than what we've already estimated.
Okay.
That's.
I
what we're up
understand.
against.
Okay. You've answered my question.
So I like to deal in facts, and the facts are is that some MUDs have deferred.
Two
So-
deferred, and the others.
And 4 have approved.
I'm sorry, six?
Six have approved, 2 have deferred.
This month and next month.
Correct.
Who's the final authority, the trustees or the MUDs?
These are amendments to y'all's
So we've already lost.
Do you have to,
Each district has to approve an amendment to your contract.
so
So
all
are
of
we
them,
unanimous?
it's got to be,
Well, I mean, of course, it would be good to have all the districts in agreement. If not, then it would be, the river authority's next decision as to how they address that.
okay. Well, I understand the SJRA's position. We keep kicking it down the road farther and farther, keep saying, well, we need to study, we need more facts. We need to draw a line in the sand. And 2 of the MUDs have already drawn the line to next meeting. I'm kind of curious how this board feels. Anyone want to share? I assume you want to defer.
You know, obviously,
Just,
I've spent a lot of time, doing analysis, listening, reading, books. I also know that there's, every election is contested. I can also tell you that on at the board meetings and other discussions, that there is a rush to get this done before the election. That's the only reason we're doing this right now. And I don't think there's any rush. He talks about inflation. Well, that's always that way. I don't know any business that makes a decision based on so they can beat inflation. It's just the way it is, and I think we should defer it and we should talk about it, because you're talking about taking the water rates from 104 per month to 250 per month on average bill. And I don't necessarily, agree that the discussion is finished. And I also think that the only reason this vote's occurring today is because the election's nearing. And I think it behooves us to listen to the people of the Woodlands and what they're going to say. I don't know what they're going to say, but we should wait and listen to see what the people of the Woodlands say. This is the same thing that went along with the pipeline.
George, do you have an opinion?
I've gotten to the point in life where I have an opinion on almost everything.
Right. In
So-
10 seconds or less.
So it'll take me more than 10 seconds.
All right, yes or no?
I want to say that I understand that the Board of Trustees agreed to spend $50,000 for more economic data. And I'm in my mind, I think I know how it's going to turn out. But the concern I have is that, a month from now, we'll come back and say, well, that wasn't enough economic data. We didn't specify it right, or they didn't deliver what we really wanted. And I'd sure like to hear today, is the economic data that the SJRA is going to provide, does it meet the requirements to make a decision? Can we make a decision in a month if we delay? And I'll just say, we as MUD 46.
It's 6% per year compounded to take it from 104 to 250.
Yeah, but that's.
But that's the economic.
Missing what the point is. If I understand right, and I don't really understand what the economic data that the SJRA is going to provide, but I think it's going to be some form of net present value of the different options so that you can compare the options. That's what I think I understand. And I guess my question is, I'd like to hear a consensus from here. That data is going to be good enough. We're not going to come back and say, oh, well, we missed, the price.
The facts are it's 104 now going to 250. Okay, on a net present value basis, it's making the assumption that the inflation rate is going to be a little over double what the actual rate is now, which is 3.5%. if you believe the federal government. Okay, so from my perspective, on an individual year-to-year basis, it's not that challenging. It's a concern. It's a flashing amber light, but it's not that
So
concerning.
inflation rate from, or your,
Calculation comes out to 6 to 7%.
so if
Per
you
year.
say 6 or 7% of $104
Comes out
to what?
to 250, exactly what is on this, in the sheet that Eric provided.
I would do want to clarify something.
Yeah, there's
because
two things.
Yeah, we're
you
conflating.
made Reference to water bill going to 250, and that's not. what
It's
we're
not the
talking
water
about.
bill, it's the
Oh,
actual.
I know it's not. It's
So
the,
the supplemental agreement that's on item 413 is to begin the engineering for the wastewater treatment plant. That's it.
No, that's not it.
It is it.
That is.
No, once you do the engineering, you spend $40 million to do this, you've bitten the apple. You go to the grocery store and you bite an apple, you own it. So that's right. I mean, that's what's happening here. You're gonna spend $40 million. That means today, we're committing and $500 million with these projects.
No.
$500 million
I believe
on
it.
$200
No,
million
that's-
project.
No.
It's a 200.
No, just
It's not correct.
to be clear, the estimate that was done last month was an effort to say, okay, if everything in the 10-year plan was done, which includes AC water lines, which includes wastewater treatment plant that's still got a pretty wide, estimate variation because there hasn't been the design and engineering done, and all the other stuff in their 10-year plan, all that stuff was done, which is 600 and whatever million. These are options for how we could pay for it. That's what last month's analysis was, not the 40 million and not even in the band of 200 to 400 million estimate of the plant right now, which can't be narrowed until that engineering is done. That would be what, around half or 60% of that total number. So just to make sure that everybody's clear what we're talking about, this is about the wastewater treatment plant, the first piece of it. Even if you went all the way to take care of
It'd be 280, 290.
Correct.
That's
Correct, which is not what's in that number. It's about half that. If you went all the way to David's point. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other point of clarification I'd make as to the NPV analysis is my understanding is that the purpose of that was for folks who had not made the determination about whether the new plant was the right answer or not. And they were still evaluating, do we do a few
Right.
components? How many components? Because there was a list of like 2 columns of stuff that would need to be done. What's the tipping, at what tipping point? Let's say there's 12 or 14 items on there. If the NPV of doing maybe 4 of them or 5 of them, if it tips you over the cost on net present value basis of doing the new plant, well, there's no point in doing items, 5 through 12, because you've already determined that your tipping point on a net present value basis is already past that. So my understanding was it was an effort to do a quicker and cheaper analysis than coming up with cost estimates for all 12 or 14 of those, because in David's opinion from Freeze and Nichols, you're probably going to hit that, that transition point well before you add up all 12 of them. So I think, and I may be doing lawyer speak for, engineering work. So, feel free to hop in, but that's what I took last week. And that was only for those folks who still needed that analysis before being able to make a decision about should we go forward with a new plant or not. So that's why I said at the beginning of this, your first step is, do I think a new plant's necessary or do I need more information? If you're convinced that you need a new plant, like some board members have been, they said, I don't need more NPV analysis on components because I'm already there. Others that have said, hey, I'm still not sure if we need a plant. I want to see this tipping point analysis and see, okay, 4 or 5 components, we're already over that. And we haven't even got to the full 12 or however many are in those 2 columns that the river authority is saying would need to be done.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps to clarify.
Let me ask you a question, just so I have an understanding, the same understanding as everybody. This is the 6 approximately, right? This bond that we were provided, the 10-year plan.
It went from 5 to 6.
And this is supposed to pay for this.
Yes.
does this have the
No,
wastewater treatment?
No,
That's right.
that's not right.
No,
No.
This only pays for the $40 million bond.
this summary that you
Full-
provided last
It
night.
was intended to cover the 591 million in the 10-year plan. That's correct.
Okay,
That's right.
so this pays, this 250 that everybody's referring to.
What page is that? 250.
Ten-year
I,
period.
this I have. What page is that?
It doesn't number it, it just says, bond fund.
Okay, Bond fund.
TWDB. And from February,
okay, I got it.
okay,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
this 613, this is how we pay for that. This is what, 4 options to pay for that. Did this include treatment plant 1, the 40 million or the 500 million or whatever? Did this
Yes.
include the 40 million?
Yeah, that's the engineering for it.
Okay, so just so that everybody's on the same page, it was not intended to pay for all of the treatment plant 1.
That and everything else.
The full 10-year CIP is included in that.
Yeah, these are just the funding options, which is, we're gonna discuss that on item 15
You
anyway.
have to tell me where it is on here. Someone's gonna have to tell me where it's,
Tell you what's in there.
And plant. the
yeah,
plant.
tell me where it's paid for. Where it's budgeted.
On fund water reclamation facility number 1.
Okay,
If you add all these totals up, it comes up to 281 million.
okay. I just
And
want
that's
to
all
make
we're
sure.
talking, that's all we're talking about today.
Well, the engineering that we're talking about today is
Where's
in
that?
that number.
Over that. It's in that number.
I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Are you convinced yet? I'm not.
I'm
So, honestly,
on my
we
page.
can't even understand it yet ourselves.
Well,
Well,
This is my.
that's,
I think we understand it. I think we're just having different conversations. So maybe we're in the same book. We're just all on different chapters. Like I hear what you're saying and what you're saying.
all
We
right.
have to make the $40 million decision today, or we can defer it.
So I'm gonna make a resolution. If you're in favor of it, you want to proceed. If you're not in favor of it, you want to defer.
And
All right.
I would like to hang a caveat on that defer. I would like to say the data that the SJRA is gonna provide next month is gonna be adequate to make a decision. I don't wanna hear next month, oh, what, they didn't give us what we really wanted. I wanna hear today that what the SJRA is gonna deliver is gonna be good enough.
No one can predict.
And you've
Yeah,
been
no
to
one-
the
no one-
meetings,
I've
you've been to the
meeting. I'll
trustees.
tell you,
meeting.
I was at the meeting. And
You
the
don't know.
proposal by the SGRA was to spend $150,000 to gather the data on those, in those 2 columns.
Was it
And-
150 or 50?
50.
150,
Fine.
$155,000.
Say
And
that again.
the $155,000 to
It was
provide
reduced to how much?
To 50.
50 from 50,000.
It
I'm
was
sorry,
reduced
having-
to 50,000.
Right.
Who's the question being directed to?
You.
Started out as 155,000 and through discussion and the desire to try and streamline the process, it was reduced to 50,000 and we are doing a bridged version of what was in the scope.
And how many man months is 50,000?
Almost 30 days worth of work
So
One person?
by multiple people. on
Yeah,
three
that's not
sites.
one person.
What do you saw, 5 people?
I don't know how big a team they
You
have.
probably average about 270 a person per hour.
the purpose of reducing it to 50, right? The purpose of reducing it to 50, so they could get a vote back, I mean, a response back before the next trustee meeting. So action could be taken. So here we're going, the next trustee meeting, what we do is we certify the election results. And the following month meetings, if anybody wins, we install new directors. And they're trying to squeeze this in so that this is completed, right before the certification of the results of the vote.
Question to you is, are the numbers he's gonna provide, are
I
they
can't
gonna?
guess what he's going to provide.
He's,
Yeah, no one can guess what.
Let's reject that. I mean,
but I mean,
look,
is the
let's-
data, we're specking out the data that he's gonna provide, right?
They,
Have we specified the information that we need to make a decision adequate?
let me step back. Connie, right?
I was not at the meeting.
No, previous meetings. She provided a one-page table that basically said, you know, here's the stuff that needs to be done by a certain date, and here's the stuff that has to be done by this date. So the discussion was about that table. And I might have it with me.
The discussion was about that table and abbreviated or abridged version of what is being done is Freeze and Nichols is identifying the big components of that list and trying to put a price to that. And then if the price of those, the big components exceeds some breakpoint number or tipping point number, then it's pointless to go beyond that in estimating the rest because you've already, potentially you're above 35 million or almost $60 million worth of effort. And then they come back and give you a recommendation on, okay, that will extend the life of the plant so many years, but then at the end of that time, you still have to replace that plant. You just can't keep band-aiding that plant.
All this was verbal. All this was presented verbally. So I'm like you, I'd like to see a written piece of paper.
I'd like to
With
see
that.
you provide what you need written.
Well, let's go with that. So in one of our previous meetings,
I don't want to go back to.
Fred passed a motion that they would provide me with those documents. You mean, that's true.
But what numbers
No, hold
do you need
No, hold it.
today?
Let me
to
go
make
on.
a decision. I don't care about the past. We can keep dredging up the past.
I'm just
and
saying
say,
what they provided was a verbal discussion. And we're gonna spend $40 million, or really, we're gonna spend $285 million, because once you did $40 million design, you're locked in. We're voting on $280 million here today. And we had a generic on what they were gonna provide. They said they'd provide it. I mean, one of our mud meetings, he said it'd take 3 months. I said, you know, that's fine with me. And then all of a sudden, it went from 150, it went to 50. And the object was to get it done in a week and a half, so we can have it at the next trustee meeting, so we can vote.
Okay.
All
right.
Trustee.
Well, I'm just saying, the purpose was to get it done so that, I don't know what vote's gonna occur, because 50,000, you know, bring the data.
Yeah.
Let's look at the data next month.
All right, well, let's get back to my original motion. If you vote to defer, then vote against this resolution. If you want to continue, vote for it. So I make a resolution that,
Recorded vote, please.
all right, consider an act on a supplemental agreement for engineering of the wastewater reclamation facility. All those in favor of proceeding, say,
Who made the motion?
oh yeah, I made the motion. I need a second. Okay, there is no second, so,
Okay, I'll say.
okay. I'm assuming you want to defer. So,
Second, on to move to approve.
yeah, so you're gonna say, okay, so we have a second. Is there a discussion that we haven't already had? All right, all those in favor of the amendment to, or the motion to proceed on the supplemental agreement, say aye.
Aye.
So we have 2, and there's 3 that, okay, all those. Okay, the motion fails, so we are deferring. Very good, thank you. Good discussion. You can put your weapons away now.
I'd like to make 2 suggestions.
Yes, sir.
One that George made, I think is appropriate, that David needs to document in writing, of course, what he expects from the SJRA specifically. Okay. I also think that we need to have a briefing session with whoever wins. If there's no change in the board, we don't need to have that meeting. And the next meeting, what we will do is merely say, okay, do we go forward or not? I think it's prudent to be cautious, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
So we don't get the information that you need, David, and we don't distribute it to be able to make a good decision, or at least qualify our thought process to make a decision. I think that it's important to do that.
Okay. On his recommendation, can you provide that?
I'll I'll add to this, so.
Well,
Yes,
rather than
so-
discussion, it's a
no,
yes
I
or no
can tell you what
question.
I've received so far. You mean, I've, Connie's given me kind of a foot tall set of books. And I've went through those books. You mean, and, the numbers aren't in there because it
Okay.
was really never discussed. So
Back to what?
I guess I'll say they're gonna provide a doc. And I think we should.
Finding it.
Yeah, so I'm asking you, what do you want to see?
Satisfy you to be able to move forward.
I'm just saying that there was, I don't have it with me. There was a sheet that listed all the action items and there was a discussion. I would like to see that discussion memorialized in writing. You know, I mean, he talked about it and you're gonna provide some feedback back for the $50,000. I'd like to see that.
But it's not a detailed cost estimate.
I understood.
Right.
I was there. I
Why
understand.
is it nobody can complete a sentence when you're?
Go ahead,
When
go
they're
ahead.
talking?
Go ahead.
As we mentioned last week and earlier this evening, it is not a detailed cost estimate of all 24 items on that list. It's a conceptual cost estimate of the major items to identify what the break point is of deciding of whether to go forward with the plan or whether to go forward with rehabilitation and rehab in place of certain components. And if that buys you 10 years, that's one thing. If it buys you 5 years, it's one thing. But at the end of that time, there's got to be a new plan in the process. There are major portions of that plan that are beyond their service life. And I understand that you disagree with service life and design life. But in our world, those are key elements.
I respect and agree with what Ed just said. If you ask the questions that will allow this board to be able to evaluate under the way Ed described it, then I think we would have enough to say, let's move on. We don't need to have a lengthy kind of,
Kind of wait for the document. And
we're gonna wait for your.
All right, why don't we just, he clearly doesn't want to provide us with what he wants to see, so therefore, let's just let the SJRA decide for him. And let's move on to item number 14. Thank you. Very good. All right, item 14, receive the regular SJRA Woodlands Division report. Thank you. I'll buy you a beer.
Wait a minute, I got a question. Somewhere here, I got it. On page 33.
Yes, sir.
You have operating expenses, somewhere about $1 million above budget. And I was wondering what it is that happened to cause that overage.
That is in the GRP budget, and those are for the February financials. Operating expenses, that would be legal expenses.
Yes.
$1 million in legal?
Over the budget, yes.
Right, I'll talk a little bit about it.
Not mine.
All right,
So if you flip to page 38, GRP financials for February, you can look under operating expenses, second line down. Says professional fees. If you go to the right where it says actuals at almost 1.3 million, where the budget was 237,000. That $1 million is related to the lawsuits and the arguments, I guess they're called, that occurred in January.
Federal.
On the federal.
Like the federal antitrust suit.
Right.
And on the oral arguments to the Supreme Court.
So we had two arguments at the same time.
Our legal expenses are in excess of the budget.
Okay,
do
thank
you have any more?
No.
All right, let's go to item number.
These arguments were endless, but we're gonna go on.
Well, again, I'm not the litigation counsel.
Yeah, I know.
But as long as both sides, keep kind of
Yeah.
contesting every single issue, certainly could. Just don't know where the school is.
Wasn't there just a ruling?
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yep.
Okay, I'll wait till then.
All right. Item 15, discuss potential funding alternatives related to the SJRA Woodlands Division proposed infrastructure project. There's 4 options on the table now. Any new proposals?
No, and this item was just left on there for discussion purposes.
All right.
No action. We presented it last month.
All right, great. Item 16, receive an update regarding the status of the Bear Branch, Panther Branch, and Research Forest Drive drainage improvement.
A consultant has delivered their cost estimate to us last Friday. We've gone through kind of on a cursory level. There are a number of people who have offered questions. We need to sit down with the consultant and understand their estimate because it is in excess of the monies that are available.
Okay. Do you have a suspense on when you can give a?
Hoping we come back to you within 30 days,
All right.
just to give you an idea of what direction it's in.
All right. Thank you very much.
May I just go back to this really quick? I have a question on it.
Okay.
The summary. So this summary, just so I have an idea of timeline, we're going to have to approve this 10-year plan,
Mhm.
right? Or we're going to have to say we're going to fund it. I mean, what's the process for this 10-year plan and what's the trigger for us to go forward with an option if we pay for all that? What's the process?
Yeah, eventually you'll need to decide, the MUDs will need to decide how to fund the projects at some point.
Okay,
My guess would be probably not for, even if the design and engineering goes forward, and that bond issue goes forward, my guess is it's probably gonna be a year. If most districts want to try for a rollback rate, that wouldn't be before next November.
Next November.
And so,
Was to
the time period to have the capitalized interest so that the rates are not increasing on the wholesale side, you've got that runway we were talking about. So my guess is probably you wouldn't be making a decision before an election would be called next. Rollback.
so this,
It will be held in November, period.
Yes, it has to.
Not, it has to be,
It has to
okay,
be
not in
November.
May.
No, it has to be because that's when your taxes, what happens mechanically, the board has to say, all right, I want to levy X tax, which is over the rollback rate, which triggers the election, but it's kind of funky that you have to call it before, you very well may even have your certified values. It's a little messy, but that's
each
the
board will have
process.
to make a decision prior to November on which,
August.
by August.
August,
Not this year.
Not this year, next year.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Well, what we discussed at previous meetings was, there would need to be a lot of public education to go over all of the details of this. And we felt like the boards think that they want to go in the direction of the rollback option. Because it's only in November, we don't believe that there's enough time between now and this November to throw it on there. That was why.
Not enough time for education.
For education, to go
So
through the.
These are currently unfunded. The
Correct.
613 is
Correct.
currently unfunded.
Anything over the 40 million, so assuming that first supplemental is approved,
Okay,
any additional bond issues for any other components of that 600 million, let's say that's a dead on number at 600, that other 560 would have to come in pieces back to the board for approval of subsequent supplementals. And fund.
Anything else?
Yeah.
All right. Attorney's report.
Two great things. One, alluded to the River Authority lawsuit, the one that is with the cities of Conroe and Magnolia. The River Authority got a favorable result, very favorable results from the Texas Supreme Court on that case. Unfortunately, it is all still procedural. Believe it or not, after this much time, that decision spoke to governmental immunity. So
Right.
like most governmental entities, if they are sued, the first defense is going to be, I'm not subject to your lawsuit. I have governmental immunity.
But the Supreme Court in 22-0649 basically said you are subject.
Exactly. Exactly.
Correct.
So now the case goes back to district court in Montgomery County for a trial on the merits. Anybody's guess how long that takes.
And there are appeals to that. Of course.
So right now, according to the River Authority, there's roughly in excess of 25 million of short pays and penalties and interest by those two cities that's already
And what
accumulated.
about accrued expenses?
That's all
All,
except for legal. And then they said legal is in excess of, for litigation in excess of 8 million.
So you
could
said
be at this
25,
point.
So now you're over 30, and I think the total number for page 38, your packet, total number for the Quadvest deal that was paid out was what, 12 or 14 million? So you're talking over double of that,
Unresolved.
correct?
We got 8 million in litigation. What was the other number?
25 of short pays and accumulated interest and penalties on those short pays. And that's on page 38
And that is City of Conroe.
and City of Magnolia. So some good news. I mean, there's
It is.
a resolution, but unfortunately it is still procedural and they got to go to the merits. That's one item. Second item, you may have seen in the news last week that the EPA did come out with final rules for 6 PFAS or forever chemicals. I think there's a few hundred of these total out there, but right now the EPA is regulating 6 of them. It would be a phased implementation where monitoring will be 2027. For violations will begin in 2029. And some official reports, what the backup is, that cost for implementation and treatment could be, for these new rules, could be in excess of $1.5 billion a year nationwide. So it's pretty big number. Initially, there's been some initial testing of some PFAS. I don't know if it's the 6 that are regulated by Woodlands Water in the distribution system and by the River Authority at the surface water plant and wastewater treatment plants. Those tests so far have not indicated any elevated levels of the PFAS that they have tested for
At this point,
at this point.
what is the potential impact on the 10-year plan since we're planning to build and enhance the infrastructure? What can this PFAS mean to us? Have we even looked at it? At this
Well,
point?
we interestingly, it came up in one of the earlier meetings where one of the former employees, I think directors of the Woodlands Division, spoke to that and said the carbon filter was decided on earlier in the GRP plant and actually addresses PFAS. So y'all can want to speak to that more than I can, but he did bring that up.
Yeah, so the only concern would be on the groundwater side, and we haven't studied enough to see the cost impacts. But typically speaking, if you have one well that's producing it, we'll take that well out of service.
I can speak on that. The country does not have a problem with PFAS. We come up testing at 0. The EPA came down and said that this PFAS are so toxic that 0 is the acceptable level, but we're going to put it at 4 parts per trillion as the acceptable level for the rest of the country that has to deal with this problem. Here's the irony. The federal government, i.e. the EPA, came down and said, we're going to get tough on polluters. And then they come down on rules for the people who treat the water, not the polluters. The polluters are the ones who are releasing it into the atmosphere. And these are the same people who are going to profit in systems that are going to be taking this stuff out of the water. So just keep that in mind that we have to, this is unfunded rules that they're imposing upon us and absolutely no rules on the polluters who are putting it into the environment.
I have a question. I've heard Eric and now you say we have 0
Yes.
parts per trillion. And that's an incredible thing to say, that, there's no little fluctuation in the analysis that gives you 1 or 2 parts per trillion. To say 0, that's an absolute number that's hard to believe.
Well, I think.
I'm expecting
If it's less,
you to
if it's-
say,
PFAS out there and only 6 are being regulated. And we've done some testing for some PFAS, whether they're those 6 or not, whether it's the detailed enough testing that the EPA is going to require, don't know. So all that's to be determined. The rule is
it's an
good.
incredibly small number.
Well, anything less than 1 is considered 0 by their
Well,
rules.
okay, fine. How do you know what is the next increment,
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Brian. All right. All right, do we need to get a report from the? Oh, yeah. Let's discuss the GRP surplus refund.
Page 43, I'll get to that page in a second. Just to summarize, committee made recommendation and approved the recommendation, which subsequently was approved by the SGRA Board of Directors to direct the surplus funds from the drought and from the Quadvest monies from 2022-23, I believe, or from 2022-23 surpluses. 14 million of that to be directed to buy down debt of the GRP. That would equate to a 3-cent reduction in the wholesale water rate. Then an additional 12 million, that's what comes to page 43, additional 12 million that would be directed to the GRP participants as a credit. And so on page 43, what the credit of 12 million overall looks like to the Woodlands Muds, about 3.18 million. 46's share is 707,000. That would go into the general operating funds of Mud 46. We've received the credit memo from SGRA and plan to process that as part of your April financials. And then you'll see that next month.
So the disbursement date is next month
The disbursement date,
of the 707.
it will be credited in your April financials. We'll process it.
And we'll see it next month.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
And you guys determined that the general operating fund was the place, not the reserve fund?
It's the only place at this point. That's all part of the same. The
Okay.
reserve is the same, it's the same fund.
All right.
So that we have the option of putting it in the reserve, correct?
No.
No, we don't.
You can have, I mean, you could create a sub account of your general operating account that can be designated for, say, seed money to
Thank you.
pay
Perfect.
for wholesale.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it could be.
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
So do we need to have an agenda item next month to say what we're gonna do with that 700,000?
Good idea. I'll second
Well,
that.
he's already determined that it goes to the,
No, I mean, what we're gonna do? Are we gonna keep it? Or are we gonna return it to the?
Yeah, it's not earmarked or anything for anything.
I mean,
It
are we
goes into
gonna,
your budget or into
we can
your.
earmark it though?
You could.
I think George is a good point. You want to make a proposal?
put it on the agenda.
Next month's agenda. For whoever's here.
Yeah, put it in next month's agenda and we'll make a decision where it goes. Perfect.
Begin the budget cycle. June.
For the river authority.
That was one of the topics that I had mentioned with another mud today, I think it was, is that they asked the same question, what are we gonna do with it? And my response was, well, you might want to look at your budget as we go into the next budget cycle and identify, it might be that, as we mentioned, you want to look at your reserves and use it to bump those where, closer to where they should be, or use it for something else, or how does it fit into your budget? So the question was, you might want to hold off until we get into the budget, which is this summer, but we'll put it on the agenda. We certainly can start talking about it. Thanks.
Speaking about budgets, and this is kind of related, in a release, this is on page 65 and 66. The new general manager, Obi Spear, basically said, we want to give the money back to the participants through the budgetary process. He said the GRP review committee, et cetera, feel that our staff and board members want to do the right thing and apply these funds to participant accounts. That basically says to me that we're looking at a lower budget request, both from the SGRA and for Mud 46. Is that a problem of these articles and news releases?
Of the debt,
Correct.
I think the river authority has said that the anticipated reduction in the GRP is 3 cents in the upcoming budget.
I didn't print a copy of this out, but Chris, in your response to Ed's response to me, and I forwarded to several people here complying with the state law. I didn't bring it with me now. What was the percent impact? I thought by memory, and I could be wrong here, at 7.6% if they went forward with all of the excess funds?
The trustees
Oh, it is. Okay. I didn't see that.
somewhere. It's wondering.
I had the document. I didn't print it out for myself.
53, about middle of the page, starts with, there was a question asked, but it shows to be a wholesale water rate increase of 60 cents per 1,000 gallons. And a wholesale wastewater rate increase by 28%, 28 cents per 1,000 gallon. If the entirety of the excess fund, the free, excess funds minus the AC water line and minus textile was refunded. So about 3.5 million.
And I understand some of the boards, some of the MUD boards have now taken another look at the reserve allocation. Is that correct?
The entire resolution, I believe, the directors are taking a look at that.
Okay, okay.
They've been asked to, I guess.
They've been asked to submit comments to Eric so that he can pass those to the audit.
Very good.
All right, item 19, general manager's report.
All right, just a few things left. Wanted to point out in your packet, we included a couple of customers. I'd like to see those. Point out that the township did do a proclamation in honor of Bruce Cunningham, March 27th, Bruce Cunningham Day, for his passing. AWD tomorrow night will have its spring seminar. Speaker is Mike Turco, General Manager from Harris Gavitt Subsidence District. So that should be a good one. Shelley, myself, and several other directors across the MUDs are going to be in attendance at that. Wanted to point out that we have finished the replacement of the roof on the building. So we're doing some building repairs. We did suffer some a little bit of water intrusion unrelated to the roof from last week's heavy storm that we'll have to deal with. And we're working to solve that from the balcony up here. Wanted to point out our new map, another improvement. Start to see some changes that utilize more of that look than, our old look. Here's the before, here's the after, to make some improvements to the customer and common areas that you'll see. So we're working on some things, but that was actually cheaper than that option, believe it or not. It's very affordable. And lastly, I wanted to just kick it over to John for communication.
Evening. Page 49, starts your report. Keep it brief for you. Just want to touch on a couple items in that. We are getting out information on the election, just when and where, pointing it directly from the county election website or pointing, in most cases, just to the website. We'll have continuing messaging going out as far as early voting period and the election date itself. But be advised there. And then just a quick update on Holloway Infrastructure Communications Campaign on page 51. So we have that strategic plan pretty much finalized. The board of directors, River Authority Board of Directors will vote on that at the end of the month. If they will vote to approve work order 2, which funds phase 3 and 4 of the campaign. So what that means is that strategic plan, if that vote is approved, will then be applicable. Start to get some real work done, and then we'll get back to you on our progress regularly on that. But we expect to be implementing beginning of next month. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good report. All right, do you want to give the trustee report?
I think we've talked about pretty much most of it.
Okay.
We've talked about it.
All right, have you guys put your weapons away?
I would make one suggestion to it is that the cost
What?
for the trustee report, because the 50,000 wasn't in the report, and so I was going off of the 155. And so there's just no mention that it was reduced down to 50.
That comment was made,
Yeah, it
and I
was.
think that's going to be reflected in the final. Put together, I think, in short order.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, do we need to recess?
Not.
All right.
We don't need a recess.
All right, let me tell you what I have for matters to be placed on the future agenda. First of all, does anyone plan to not be here next month? we may or may not seat new directors next month. So I need to know that. The next item is, deals with item 12 on the agenda, to discuss the selling price for DFDUs by the MUD. And that was brought forward by Fred.
New developments, right? New
For
development.
new developments, right?
For new development. And then, did we resolve about the data that you are wanting from the SJRA? Okay, I'll leave it at that. All right, and then George asked for an agenda item to make a decision on where to direct excess from funds from the SJRA GRP surplus. All right, you got all that? All right, anything else? All right. I'm gonna make a motion that we adjourn. All right, all those in favor, say aye. All right, thank you very much.